Hi guys, I'm just going to go over a little bit of what we did in class just in case you want a refresher to take notes on. I know it went by a little quickly, so this will hopefully help you a little bit. So let's go ahead and create a new document, and we're going to make it 1920 by 1080. And I'm going to set my window workspace back to motion and make sure it's reset. What we're going to be doing is creating a 3-frame animation using an image as like the basis. The thing that we're tracing is not going to move, but because we're going to do it in 3-frame, it's going to give it a little bit of a wiggle. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and bring that image in. I'm going to make a new layer with the little plus button here. That'll create this new layer, and I'm going to call it Apple. And I'm going to move my screen out of the way and pull this apple into the screen, just like that. And now I'm going to resize it to about the size I want, which is a little bit like that. And I'm going to hit return. And as we showed in class, notice that this layer here on the layers panel is a smart layer. So we're going to right click and select convert to layers, and that gets rid of the little clippy mask there, and now it is a normal layer that we can actually work with. Okay, the next thing we're going to need is a video layer, so we're going to go up to layers, video layer, and then a new blank video layer is what we're going to need. And I'm just going to go ahead and use my brush tool, B for brush, pick the Kyle pencil because that's what we use, and I'm going to just go ahead and put 3 frames out, and I'm just going to list them. Well, I don't need to list them, but we're going to draw 3 frames. I'm going to open up this little panel here so you can see a little bit more about what we're doing. We're currently on the first frame, and you can see that it's ready to go. And you notice that my video layer here, I'm just going to call it pencil, is on the top of the apple. I'm going to take the apple layer and actually dial it down a little bit so I can actually see what I'm drawing. Okay, now I'm going to go to the pencil layer, and I'm going to pick up my pencil. I'm going to hit D for default, so black will be what I'm drawing with. And then I'm going to go ahead and draw the apple using my pencil. Okay, got this apple, kind of drawing with the Wacom tablet. And then I'm going to draw this part right here. And I'm going to draw this part. Make sure I'm careful, do the leaf. Try to do a good job, and that's 1 frame now. Okay, and if I turn off that apple, you'll see that that is in fact a drawing of an apple, which is great. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is go to the next frame with the arrow keys, go to the next. Now what did I forget to do? Oh, I forgot to, I'm going to see this happens a lot, set the timeline frame rate to 12. Luckily I only drew 1 drawing, and so it didn't erase that second drawing, so I got lucky because, and then I'm going to make sure onion skin is turned off because I don't want to see my previous drawing. And I'm going to move to the next frame here, and I'm going to do the same exact thing again. In fact, I'm just going to zoom in a little bit, and then I'm going to go ahead and trace that apple. Again, I'm on the correct pencil layer, and I'm just going around tracing the apple, kind of trying to be pretty accurate. It's kind of hard to do with the hands. So then I'm going to do the same thing as before. There's that. If I make a mistake, I could always undo Command Z a couple times so that I get something like that. I just kind of undo usually how I do this. There. And then we're going to go ahead and get that leaf. And that's our second layer. Okay, then we'll do it one more time. So we'll just go going to the next frame, doing the same thing as before. Sometimes it's good to like just move the Wacom tablet a little bit so it's easier to draw on. Gonna make this go up. Trying to get this done as quickly as possible because, you know, other things to do. Okay, there we go. Okay, so at least we've got the basic shape going on. So I'm going to turn off the apple at this point, and you can see I've got 1, 2, 3 apples, right? And you can see I missed, it's kind of like I missed this part here. So I'm checking to see if there's anything else I have. Like I'm going to hit the E for eraser and the bracket key to make it smaller, because there's like this little piece right there that I don't like. I think I want the line here for the leaf to make it look better, so I'm just going to turn that on and hit the brush tool again, and I'm just going to put that leaf thing in on all three of the drawings. And you know why we're doing threes, because we've done this before. So this is huge. Okay, so now I've got, I'll just put one right there, one right there, one right there. So now we've got 3 apples, and I'm going to change my ending point so that it ends on that 3rd frame, so that I can see 1, 2, 3, and so it ends right there. Even though it appears that it ends at a frame where it's like blank, it actually isn't. You're going to actually see this when it goes. And so you see I've got the apple going. I'm going to stop it, turn off the apple. So here's what we got so far. Now, the next thing I want to do is actually create a fill layer, and I'm going to do that with another video layer. Remember, this is the line layer, so this is hopefully this object that I drew is a solid object, that there's no holes in it. And if there were any holes, I wouldn't be able to select. Like you can see there might have been, like here, I could just zoom in here. There might have been a hole right here that I just plugged. And if there's a hole, what will happen is it won't be able to select the actual inside of the apple. Obviously, here's a hole. And so when I use the selection tool, that'll probably mess things up. But once it's a solid thing, like the leaf looks solid, it should be no problem. So I'm just kind of going through, looking at it, making sure there's no gaps so that I can select, right? And I'm using my space bar to like pan around. Notice the gap here. So that's going to be a gap, and we'll want to get rid of that. Looking here, there's obviously a gap here, right? So we can get that. Okay, great. So now I'm going to zoom out, and then what we're going to do is we're going to create a new layer. So layer, video layer, new blank video layer. We're going to call this fill, F-I-L-L, and we're going to put it underneath the apple pencil layer, because it's going to be underneath. And now what we're going to do is move it, so scooch it so it all starts at the same place, because when I created it, I was on the 3rd frame. And then we're going to use the magic wand tool. That's the 1, 2, 3, 4th one down, and that's this tool right here. W for wand, and then what I'm going to do is select the pencil layer, because that's the one that has the stuff. Click on the inside, and notice it selects the apple. Now I'm going to click the fill layer once. I'm going to pick a color that like reminds me of appleness. Obviously that's not an apple. And I'm just going to go ahead and hit the G button, and that's going to get me to the paint bucket tool right there. And then I'm going to fill. Then I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm deselecting, Command D. Go to the next frame, Wand W. Click the pencil layer. Select the inside. Notice it does select. I'm also going to hold the Shift key down and select this little part, because that's also part of the apple. Now I'm going to go to the fill layer, hit the G button, and then fill. And then finally, next frame, with the arrow keys, deselect, Command D, W for the wand, click on the pencil layer, select it, also select this with the Shift, and now go to the fill layer, G to paint bucket tool, and that paints in there, and that's it. Deselect, and now we have a 3-framed apple. Now I want to go ahead and fill the leaf as well. I'm going to do the same thing as before. I'm going to go to the 1st frame, select the pencil tool, W, select the interior, go to the fill tool, G, click, select the green. It's kind of, let's see, maybe something like that. And then we're going to fill in on the fill layer. And then we're going to go back to the pencil. Next one, deselect, Command D, W for the wand tool, then back to the fill layer, G, and then back to the pencil, deselect, Command D, W, next frame, select that side, inside, go to the fill layer, G, and there we go. So now we've got an apple with, and everything looks filled in. Now, if we turned off the pencil layer, this is what we got for the fill layer. And you can kind of see if you wanted to, you could use the brush tool to kind of like, say you wanted to have on this apple layer, maybe you wanted to, I'm going to hold the Option key down to select, a color. I'm going to select that red. And now I'm on the brush tool, so I'm going to just make this a little bit bigger so you can see what's going on. I mean, I could just actually work on the fill layer like this, right? I might want to have this be solid. And remember, the pencil layer is underneath, so I can actually just hand draw if I wanted to. There was no reason that I had to use the fill tool, because you could just draw if you wanted to. I'm going to pick the color green, and I'm going to draw here. And notice what happens when it's not white underneath. The pencil definitely comes out a little bit nicer, right? So that's also another thing that you'll want to do. So again, I'm just going to fill. Remember, what I'm doing here is just filling in all this white so that that black line actually really is present on top of that apple and on top of that leaf there. And I'm using a pencil, this pencil tool, but I think this would be a little bit better. This kind of solid shape, that kind of thing. So you can think of it like that. You can think of it like one layer is going to give you, it's going to give you the color, and then the other layer is going to give you the pencil lines. So I'm going to turn on my pencil, see if I've got anything else I want to kind of go around and fix. And now with this fill layer, you can actually lock the fill layer so that you can't actually draw outside of it, which is always nice by selecting this little checkerboard right here. And you notice that the lock icon turns on. And what happens is now you could use, like, say you have this red, you want a little darker red. Now you could use this as a shader brush. So say, for instance, I have the pencil hard and I get it really big. And now you can see that I can actually turn on the pencil layer so we can see what's going on. I could actually draw where the shadows are for the apple, just with, and notice that if I draw outside of the apple, like here's what would happen if I turned the lock off. Just this, right? Which is not what we want. If you have the lock on, the nice thing is you can't really mess up as far as shading is concerned, right? And then I'll do the same thing for each frame. I'll just go ahead and give that a little bit of a look at what's, see before, after, kind of like, yeah, this is where it was. Forget up here. Notice the red right there. I'm going to unlock this so that I can fill in with red here. And then I'm going to lock it again. And then finally do the same thing here. There. And you could do this with the leaf as well. Notice that if I turn the background off, there's some things that are still transparent, and you want to kind of fix that, like the stem right here. So I'm going to pick a color for the stem. And this time, instead of using the fill tool, I'm just going to go right to the fill layer, turn off that lock because I don't want to have it locked. And then I'm going to just use a normal brush that's kind of smaller, right? And then I'm just going to actually just fill on the fill layer. So in essence, I'm painting on the layer below. And I'll just give this like a little thing right there, and then I'll go to the next one. And you don't have to be perfect, because remember, people are going to see this as an animation, so it will be going by very quickly. And you can kind of now see how this works, right? Now if I zoom out, you can see now that this apple is pretty solid. Obviously there's some transparency issues, because if I turn off the pencil layer, you can kind of see there are some issues with transparency here. I can grab some of the color and kind of fill it in here if I wanted to. Anyway, you could go crazy. You could just draw in the first place on this fill layer. You didn't need to like actually use the whatever tool. You could have just went in and just filled it in with the pencil layer on top, because it wouldn't have messed anything up. Something like this. And then when you're ready to export it, you turn off the background layer. You turn off the traced layer, the apple layer. And what you're going to do is just watch it and make sure it's not ping-ponging. Like, so for instance, make sure you don't have this too far in, like this, because it's just going to jiggle like that, back, forth, 1, 2. It goes too fast. If you have 3, it'll look like this. And make sure you don't have an extra frame, because notice how it blinks out like that? That's also going to be a problem. So we want 3 frames only. Okay, that's what we want. So we're going to go to File, Export, Render Video, and this is where we're going to change the settings, right? And we want to change them from what is normally the case, which is H.264. This is what you want if you're just exporting the video and you're done. We're going to export it as a QuickTime, and we're going to make sure that the alpha channel is straight unmatte. This is really important. If this doesn't work, then it's going to be a problem. We're going to make sure the folder that we select is the desktop, because that's where I'd like to see it, right? And then we're going to hit Render. I'm just going to save what I've done because I didn't save it. So if I have to go back and fix something, at least I have that opportunity, because, you know, the apple's right here. And now let's take a look at my apple that's on the desktop. And here it is, right? Untitled One Movie, which is a brilliant name. Now this movie won't actually be visible in QuickTime until I open it up in Premiere. So let's go ahead and show you how that's going to look. So I go to Premiere, close this up, close this guy up, and then I'm just going to make a new project so you can see it and call it Apple. Double click here to bring that Apple movie in, hit import, and then I'm going to just drag this into the timeline, and notice the background is transparent, but because on Premiere it doesn't show transparency, instead you're just showing the apple. And notice you also are not set up to loop by default, right? So if you want to loop, there's a couple things you could do. You could just copy, and you can just copy, option drag it like this, and then that'll make a copy, right? You can select more if you don't want to just select one at a time and do this forever. But I'm just going to select more like this, just option drag it. I'm going to hit the delete key for this stuff. So you can see that you could quickly get a nice looping animation. By the way, this little appendage stuff is just audio. I'm holding the option key down to get rid of that. And then the minus button, just like on Photoshop, allows you to zoom out. So we'll just do this a couple times. And then one last time, just so you can see this for a nice long time. So at this point, this is the Apple sequence here. We'll be talking more about Premiere, but you can kind of see if I were to just play this apple now is just sitting there and just not doing too much, right? Now the cool part about the having the apple in Premiere is that you can actually do other things with it, and that's what we're going to be doing in the future videos. But for instance, let me make a new sequence. New sequence. A sequence is just a movie, right? And I'm going to make sure it is set to HDV 1080p 24 frames per second. And I'm now going to take the apple sequence and bring it into the new sequence. In other words, I'm nesting. I'm taking the apple, the first sequence, the apple sequence has all the little things, and then I'm actually taking that entire video and putting that, as you can see, into the second sequence. And the reason I'm doing that is because now I could then duplicate this if I wanted to. So you can see I can change the location of that duplicate. Like for instance, you can see I could put the apple next to it like this. I could change the scale of that. So I could have 2 apples on at a time. I could have 3 apples on. I could change the position of that one. Change the size, right? And I can even offset things. But you see now that you have a lot of opportunities to work with just this one apple and use it for whatever you need in another application that allows you to put those apple, to kind of lay things out. And then finally, what we'll be doing in the future is actually showing you how to animate some of this stuff. So for instance, here's the apple. If I were to take this little position clock stopwatch and click on it somewhere around here, and then move the playhead to here and actually change the position to here, you can see if I were to play that back, that apple now is moving in the timeline right here. So this is the point, or this is what we're going for, is the idea of like being able to create objects that are animated, but they don't look static. They look like they could be part of a bigger animation, and that can layer very nicely with other things, so that the transparent background is something that will, be useful. So if you wanted to make a big pile of apples. Okay, hope that helps.